Moonshine Life Recipes Group. Vodka. Co-authored by Tom Blake and Sophia Latorre. Vodka is a neutral spirit that is generally unaged and can be made from grains, potatoes, sugars, and fruits that are fermented to produce alcohol. Homebrewers must use extreme caution during the distillation process to discard methanol, which can be fatal if consumed. Distilling alcohol at home is illegal in some places, such as Australia and the United States. Other countries may require you to register your still or obtain a license to distill alcohol, such as New Zealand and the Czech Republic. Be sure to check your local regulations before beginning this process. Part 1 of 6. Choosing ingredients. Choose the ingredients you want to ferment into vodka. Vodka is commonly made from wheat, rye, barley, corn or potatoes. Sugar and molasses can also be used alone or added to other ingredients. A distiller even makes an innovative vodka from Pinot Noir red wine. Whichever you choose, it must have sugars or starches for the alcohol to be finally produced. Yeast eats sugars or starches and spits out alcohol and carbon dioxide. When making vodka from grains and potatoes, a puree must be made that contains active enzymes that break down the starches in the grains or potatoes and produce fermentable sugars. Fruit juice already contains sugars, so enzymes that break down starch are not necessary. As with fruit juice, vodka made from store-bought sugars only needs to be fermented, thus avoiding the need for puree. When already fermented media, such as wine, are used, the media can be distilled immediately into vodka. Decide if you need additional enzymes. Depending on what you decide to make your vodka with, you may need to add enzymes to help convert the starches into sugar. If you are using grains and potatoes, you will need additional enzymes. Grains and potatoes are sources of starch, so enzymes are needed to break down the starch into sugar. If you are using malted whole grains, you do not need additional enzymes. Malted whole grains, such as malted barley or malted wheat, are rich in natural enzymes that break down starches into fermentable sugars. If you are using refined sugar and molasses, you will not need additional enzymes because the sugar is already present. Add additional enzymes if necessary. Food-grade amylase enzyme powder can be purchased at a homebrew store and added to wort to convert the starch into fermentable sugars, if you are using potatoes, for example. Use the recommended amount for the amount of starch to be broken down. There is no need to use enzyme-rich malted grains such as malted barley or wheat when using enzyme powder. In order for enzymes to be able to break down starches, the starches must first be gelatinized. Flaked, rolled grains are usually already gelatinized. Non-gelatinized ingredients, such as potatoes and uncooked or malted grains, are heated in water to the gelatinization temperature of the specific starch that is used. Potatoes generally gelatinize at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 degrees Celsius, and barley and wheat gelatinize at about the same temperature. Theoretically, mashed potatoes only need to be heated to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 degrees Celsius. If a low temperature is used with potatoes, the potatoes should be finely shredded before adding to the water. The enzymes that degrade starch only work at specific temperatures and are destroyed at high temperatures. A temperature of 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 degrees Celsius, is common, but temperatures above 158 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 degrees Celsius, will result in destruction of the enzymes. The absolute maximum temperature is 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 degrees Celsius. Part 2 of 6. Making different mashes. Try a wheat mash. In a 10-gallon, 37.9 L metal pot with lid, heat 6 gallons 23 L of water to about 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 degrees Celsius. Add 2 gallons 7.6 L of dry, flaked wheat and stir. Check the temperature and make sure it is between 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 degrees Celsius, and 155 degrees Fahrenheit, 68 degrees Celsius. Add 3.8 L of ground wheat malt. The temperature should be about 149 degrees Fahrenheit, 65 degrees. Cover and let rest for 90 minutes to 2 hours, stirring occasionally. The starches should convert to fermentable sugars during this time and the mixture should become much less viscous. After 90 minutes to 2 hours, cool the mixture to 80 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees to 29 degrees Celsius. Use an immersion cooler for quick cooling or just let it cool overnight, but don't let it get much below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees Celsius. Go for mashed potatoes. Clean 9.1 kilograms, 20 pounds of potatoes. Without peeling them, boil them in a large pan until gelatinized, about an hour. Discard the water and mash the potatoes well by hand or with a food processor. Return the mashed potatoes to the kettle and add 5 to 6 gallons 19 to 23 L of tap water. Mix to combine and bring the mixture to just over 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 degrees Celsius. Add 2 pounds (0.91 kilograms) of crushed malted barley or wheat and stir well. Cover and stir periodically over 2 hours. Let cool overnight to 80 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees to 29 degrees Celsius. Letting it cool for a longer period of time also gives the enzymes in the barley malt more time to break down the potato starch. Make corn puree. Puree according to the wheat mash recipe, but substitute pregelatinized flaked corn for the flaked wheat. Alternatively, sprout your own corn over 3 days and puree it without adding malted grains. A root about 5 centimeters long should sprout from each grain. Sprouted corn will contain enzymes that were formed during the germination sprouting process. Part 3 of 6. Fermenting the alcohol. Clean all your utensils and prepare the area properly. Fermentation is conducted in clean, sanitized containers that are sometimes open but often sealed from air to prevent cross-contamination. Fermentation generally lasts 3 to 5 days. Fermentation is also possible in containers that have not been cleaned or sanitized, and the distilled product will produce drinkable alcohol, but fermentation can result in a high level of unwanted flavor compounds and higher alcohols due to the action of yeast stains and unwanted bacteria. Oxidative cleaners like Be Bright are available at homebrew stores, as are disinfectants like iodophor. Choose and configure your airlock. An airlock is a mechanism that will allow CO2 to escape without letting O2 in. 5-gallon 19L batches of strained wort can be fermented in a 7.5-gallon 28L food-grade bucket or 6-gallon 23L carboys. Lids can be attached to buckets, as can perforated rubber stoppers on carboys, but when using a lid or stopper, never seal the container completely as the pressure from carbon dioxide production will create explosive pressure. Always place an airlock in perforated rubber lids and stoppers to prevent explosive pressure from building up. When fermentation is carried out in open containers, place cheesecloth over the container to keep out insects and other undesirable things. Strain the mash or liquid into your fermentation vessel. If a puree has been made, strain the liquid with a fine mesh sieve from the puree into your clean, sanitized fermentation vessel. Try splashing the liquid and pouring it from a distance so it is well ventilated. Yeast needs air, oxygen, initially to grow and initiate quality fermentation. This is because yeast produces cellular material in the form of lipids from oxygen. However, oxygen is not desired after this initial stage of growth as yeast produces alcohol in the absence of oxygen. You may want to add a sugar solution at this point. Aerate the sugar solution by pouring it from a distance into the fermentation vessel. If the juice is fermented, aerate it by pouring from a height through a sieve or strainer into the fermentation vessel. Add the yeast to the fermentable medium. Hydrate the appropriate amount of dry distillers or other desired yeast and add it to the liquid. Stir with a clean, sanitized spoon to evenly disperse the yeast. If using an airlock, the airlock will bubble during active fermentation, and the bubbling will slow down drastically or stop completely as the liquid becomes completely fermented. Heat the fermentation liquid in a room around 80 degrees to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees to 29 degrees Celsius, to facilitate good, efficient fermentation. Alternatively, use a heating belt in cold areas. Distillers' yeast will ferment cleanly, produce a large amount of alcohol, ethanol, and produce a relatively low amount of unwanted compounds such as alcohols other than ethanol. The amount of yeast used will depend on the specific brand or type of yeast used. Nutrients may be included with the yeast in the yeast packet. Yeast nutrients are necessary when fermenting a low-nutrient medium such as sugar solutions, but can also improve fermentations when used with nutrient-rich media such as those made from grains. Collect the wash. Siphon the fermented alcoholic liquid, called wash, into a clean, sanitized container or distillation apparatus. Leave the yeast sediment behind in the fermentation vessel as it may burn when heated in the still. The siphoned wash may also be clarified by filtration or other means before distillation. Part 4 of 6. Choosing a still. Use a column still if possible. Column stills are more complex and sophisticated than pot stills. They can be purchased or, depending on the project, constructed from readily available materials. However, column stills and pot stills work relatively similarly. Cooling water is generally circulated through a sealed compartment in the distillation column, causing vaporized alcohol and other substances to condense in the column. This means that this still must be connected directly to a tap or a mechanical pump to move water from a supply to the still. If not recirculating water from a single supply, thousands of gallons of water may need to be used to make a small batch of vodka. If water is recirculated from a central reservoir using a pump, about 50 gallons, 189 L, of water can be used, but the water will heat up and become less effective. Opt for a pot still if you can't find a column still. Simple stills are similar to pressure cookers that are connected to pipes or tubes. They can be built very easily and cheaply. Unlike column stills, which are essentially vertical columns, pot stills can utilize bent or coiled tubes or tubes that can be submerged in a container of cooling water. Pumps and large volumes of cooling water are not required, but can be used. Use reflux if necessary. A reflux can still carry out several distillations at the same time. The packing between the condenser and the pot allows the vapor to condense and drip back into the liquid pool. This reflux clears the rising vapor and increases the purity of the vodka. Part 5 of 6. Distilling the alcohol. Prepare for distillation. The stills heat the fermented wash, with a relatively low alcohol content, to a temperature greater than the boiling point of alcohol but less than the boiling point of water. This way, the alcohol vaporizes while most of the water does not. The vaporized alcohol, along with some vaporized water, travels to the still's column, pipe, or tube. 12. External cooling in the form of cold water is applied to the column, pipe, or tubing, causing the vaporized alcohol to cool and condense back into liquid. This alcoholic liquid is collected and becomes vodka. Heat the wash in the still to begin the distillation process. Depending on the type of still in use, gas burners, wood-burning fireplaces or electric hobs are all options. A temperature of about 173 degrees Fahrenheit, 78.3 degrees Celsius, at sea level is desirable, but the temperature must be maintained below the boiling point of water, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius, at sea level. 13. As the wash heats, the alcohol and other substances vaporize and condense in the refrigerated area of the still water. Throw away the heads. The first distilled liquid, called heads, that is recovered from the still will be full of harmful methanol and other volatile chemicals that are toxic and can be fatal. For 5 gallons 19 L of wash, discard at least the first 2 ounces 60 milliliters of distillate. It is extremely important that you do not drink this distilled liquid. Collect the body. After discarding the heads, the collected distillate will contain the desired alcohol, ethanol, along with some water and other compounds. This is called the body, or heart. During this time, if using a column still running cold water, the water flow can be adjusted to control the output and purity of the distillate. Aim for 2 to 3 teaspoons (9.8 to 14.8 milliliters) of distillate per minute. Increased distillate production results in decreased purity. Discard the tails. Toward the end of the distillation process, when the temperature reaches 100 degrees Celsius (212 degrees Fahrenheit) and beyond, the distillation process produces other unpleasant chemicals. These are called tails, which contain fusel alcohols. Tails are undesirable as they contain propanol and butanol and must be discarded. Always make sure to throw away the tails as they should not be eaten. Check the alcohol content and purity of the distillate. Cool a sample of the distillate to 68 degrees Fahrenheit (20 degrees Celsius) and use an alcometer to measure the percentage of alcohol in the distillate. The distillate may be too diluted to serve as an acceptable vodka, weaker than 40% alcohol, or it may be more concentrated than desired, perhaps greater than 50% alcohol. 16. Vodka is usually diluted before bottling, so the spirit can have a very high alcohol content. The distillate can also be very flavorful and aromatic and require additional distillations or carbon filtration. Redistill the liquid if necessary or desired. This increases the alcohol content and further purifies the distillate. It is common to redistill the distillate 3 or more times to obtain a highly pure vodka. Keep in mind that heads and tails need to be discarded every time you distill vodka. Premium brands of vodka go through 4 or 5 distillates, and most other brands go through 3 before the vodka is diluted and bottled. Part 6 of 6. Adding the finishing touches. Filter the vodka through carbon. Pass the distillate through an activated carbon filter, such as those available at homebrew stores, to remove unwanted volatile flavors and aromas. Carbon water filters can also be modified to purify the distillate. Dilute vodka to desired strength. Add purified water to the distillate to reach the desired alcohol percentage. Use an alcometer to measure the alcohol percentage several times throughout this process until you reach the desired strength. Bottle the vodka. Fill the bottles using a gravity bottle filling setup and cork or cap the bottles. Label the bottles with custom labels if desired. Some gravity fillers may consist of a 7.5-gallon 29L bottling bucket with spigot vinyl tubing, and a simple spring-loaded plastic bottle filler. Wine bottle fillers with multiple nozzles can also be used. Enjoy. Moonshine Life Recipes Group.